Hello, everybody. Today I'm speaking with a great activist, advocate, and educator, Joe Drammissi, and he's out there in California. Joe, you're a trainer, you're a board member for San Diego County gun owners. You also used to do some radio, and you're a writer as well. Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, John. It's good to be here with you. So thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to talk.
Well, Joe,
Um,
you and I have talked about this off and on over the last couple of years, really, and a lot of it has to do with Bruin response. But before we start talking about what we're going to talk about, give me a little bit, give me your 30 seconds, give me the elevator pitch. What did I leave out about Joe Dramisi and what you do and what you're all about, so we can let everybody know?
yeah, that's a long elevator pitch, but just restricting it to the firearm stuff. Yeah, I'm a board member with San Diego County Gun Owners, which is a political action committee out here in San Diego County, and we work throughout the county to get Second Amendment friendly politicians elected through all the offices. We have 18 cities in the county, so that's 18 mayors, 18 city councils, all of those folks. So I do a lot of that kind of stuff. I'm a firearms instructor, so I'm certified to teach the concealed carry qualification classes out here in San Diego County, which we do about every weekend now. And that kind of stuff. I started the blog site on the San Diego County Gun Owners website about 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. It's been longer than that, maybe. Um, and that's how I started writing about Second Amendment stuff. I published a book and written other stuff earlier, but I started getting into that there. So I publish on that website and write my own Substack on getagrip.substack.com. So I do a lot of writing, a lot of teaching, competitive shooting, all that kind of stuff. So
Perfect.
that's
And
the 30-second firearms
no,
thing.
that's great, Joe. No, and I appreciate your time. And San Diego County gun owners, and this is a question that I would usually like hit Michael Schwartz with, who is the kind of the co-founder of and the brains of the operation. But San Diego County gun owners, you guys have done a lot of tremendous things. What would you say is like the one of the largest accomplishments that you guys have, just to let people listening in know what you guys are all about and what you've done?
Oh, by far the biggest thing is San Diego County gun owners is responsible for us getting our concealed carry rights back here in San Diego County. For decades, the sheriff would not issue to average citizens and people. And when Michael Schwartz, who's the person that founded our group, when he first founded the group in, I believe, November of 2015, his first goal was to get our concealed carry rights back. And everybody told him, "You're crazy, won't happen. The sheriff doesn't issue." And we worked on it. And like I tell students, because I make this pitch in every class to get students to join and support us. But we don't do rallies, we don't do protests, we don't do that kind of stuff. We work within the system. And the way we accomplished that was when Sheriff Gore at the time was running for re-election, we got a lot of the Republican groups and the local Republican politicians to withhold their endorsements until the sheriff changed his policy. And I think the last straw, we got the whole city council and Santee and the mayor to write him a letter urging him to do that. And he called Michael about a week after that and said, "All right, let's talk about it." And he changed his policy and he was fine until he retired. And the sheriffs have been great ever since. They're a bit slow, but I mean, but they're enthusiastic and they're friendly and helpful. So that's probably the biggest thing we've done because when we first started that, there were like 1,100, I think, concealed carry licenses in the county of 3.4 million people. And now we just went over 23,000 licenses
Wow.
here. And I hear there's about 7,000 in the pipeline. So they're backlogged over a year. But so that's probably the biggest thing we've accomplished, I think.
And the enormity of that, and I just want to dig a little bit deeper into the history, is this is coming on the heels of what? There was a non-decision, a non-acceptance from the Supreme Court, which was the Peruta case, which specifically dealt with carry in San Diego County. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. And yeah, it's really surprising. Well, I don't know if surprising is the right word, but I guess people, I wrote an article about this, stole it from actually from the old Shawshank Redemption. There's a line Morgan Freeman uses where he talks about the prisoners becoming institutionalized. And what he's referring to is prisoners that have been in prison most of their lives, and they get out, they don't know what to do or how to act because they've had their rights just crushed and destroyed all that time, and they end up back in there. And I use the analogy of that out here with gun owners in California because we become institutionalized because people they pass these laws out here, and it's similar to what you see in New Jersey. And they pass these laws out here, and people just, oh, okay, I can't do that, and that's it. There's no response, and it's challenging as an activist because, like I said, I talk about this stuff in class because I try to get people. I try to emphasize that the other side's not going to stop, and the courts are okay, but that's not a good approach or strategy because you never know how they're going to rule. And even when they do rule correctly, it takes years and years to get to that point usually. So the better strategy is to get the right people in office in the first place so you don't have those problems. But it's hard because I talk to like probably 20 students at a class, and it's like a lot of the reaction is it's sort of like, oh, I just want to shoot my gun. And it's frustrating, I guess, is a good word as an activist because it's like, guys, the other side is not, so they're not going to stop at all until, you have nothing basically. And the way to stop them is gun owners have to get up and you have to take an active approach. You got to support groups like San Diego County Gun Owners, California Rifle and Pistol Association, Gun Owners of California. There's a number of groups out here that do the lawsuits and do the fighting, and people need to get involved and support them. So that's the kind of thing that's a little bit frustrating sometimes to see that.
Oh, absolutely. So, and what brought us today was talking about the onslaught of change. So we did have the 2022 Bruen decision, which it affected California in a very meaningful way. And other states like New Jersey, Maryland, and Hawaii in particular really affected these states because we had zero functional carry. What did you just say? You guys started getting carry maybe 2015, 2016, or whenever that was in San
Yeah.
Diego County. New Jersey was one of the, hey, we started getting carry in 2022. But what we noticed was an onslaught of change. Now, I think some of the change in California had a couple false starts, we could say it, but now you guys are dealing with significant Bruen response laws, right?
Yeah, that's similar. And people get you get a skewed impression of how it is because most of the country is pretty pro Second Amendment and understands that and understands guns and everything. There's only, out of 50 states, there's what, maybe 7 states that are kind of bad. Unfortunately, we live at the tip of the spear, both of us, with these laws. And the response to the Bruen law, Bruen said, basically that the Second Amendment does indeed cover concealed carry, and you have to let people carry a firearm for protection in public. So California and some of these other states, the response was, okay, fine, we'll issue concealed carry licenses. And we'll say it's legal to carry any place it's legal to carry. We'll just make it illegal to carry every place. And that's what out here it was SB 2. That was Senate Bill 2 was the law that the sensitive area law, tried to make every place a sensitive area. And it's been going through the courts for a couple of years and, got up to the Ninth Circuit and a 3-judge panel ruled on this like a month or so ago. And it's screwy. I was just looking at the opinion here, and they upheld part of it and they struck down part of it, but the logic is just goofy. I mean, I'm confident all this stuff's going to get overturned at some point, but again, it may take years to do that.
Right.
But the way what these activist judges do in the Ninth Circuit used to be the most overturned appeals court in the country. I wrote about this last year or the year before, and at the time it was I think it was something like 80.3% of the cases that went through the Ninth Circuit and made it to the Supreme Court got overturned. And now somebody just beat us out by 2/10 of a point or something. So we're the Ninth Circuit's the second most overturned court now. Um, But still, you get these activist judges on there, and they twist the wording in Bruin to support their anti-gun thing, basically. Because if you look at what she wrote on here, the judge that actually wrote this, she's looking at Bruin saying, okay, well, we have to go by history and tradition. So what she's saying was, places that existed back in the founders' day, um, if they, banned guns there, we could ban guns there. But if they didn't exist back then, it's not reasonable to say that the founders were banning guns there. So from that goofy logic, um, they said, well, you can't ban guns in what they say, you can't ban them in banks or in hospitals or in places like that because those places existed back then and they weren't banned then. But then they turn around, they say, well, you can ban them in parks and what do we lose? We lose parks. The biggest thing that's goofy is is the alcohol thing, because what they did was they said, it's always been out here, it's always been illegal to carry in a bar, basically. You couldn't, if you were carrying, you couldn't go into a bar. And they defined a bar as any place that generates over half of their income or revenue by selling alcohol to be consumed on premises. So what SB2 did is they said, well, now we're going to include restaurants that serve alcohol. So apparently Ben Franklin could walk into his bank with his firearm and he was okay, but he couldn't walk into a pub and get a cheeseburger. That was not okay. So it's just goofy. The logic is just twisted on here. But they struck down about half of it and they left about half of it in place. But the restaurant thing is what really affects most people. But the problem is there's so many goofy, convoluted rules that I mean, it's impossible. I tell my students, in class, I'm talking to them around lunchtime, and I say most of you probably broken at least one law since you got up this morning to come here, because there's so many. It's just hard to it's hard for people to know all this stuff. I mean, I read a lot of stuff. I do this kind of thing, and I it's hard for me to keep up on it, even teaching it. The average person, it's just tough and it's scary. It's a shame because it endangers people. I want to hear a quick story with this. With SB2, right? Okay, I'm not supposed to carry in a restaurant. And now there's some arguing because if you read the actual wording, it says in a place that sells uh, liquor or intoxicating something. It doesn't actually say alcohol. So now people are saying, well, wait a minute, maybe that's just liquor, just hard liquor, distilled liquor. So I don't know if I want to go out on that branch and take a chance, but being an instructor, right? I'm thinking, okay, this is a goofy law, it's dangerous, but all right, I'll abide by it. And the I was coming home with my wife the other night. We're thinking, hey, Hooley's has some really good calamari and onion soup. So hey, we'll swing by there. So okay, I pull into the parking lot. Now I'm in my truck, so I have to take my gun out while I'm sitting in my confined space in the truck. I've got to take my loaded firearm out of the holster and try not to let anybody be able to see it through the windows. Put it in the other holster I keep and lock it up in the console vault and then go in, walk through the parking lot to the restaurant where nobody is ever assaulted or attacked in a parking lot. That just never happens. And then I have dinner and I have to come back out and I either go through the same ritual or I leave it locked up till I get home, which, it's dangerous. You make me handle a a loaded firearm in a confined space for no reason at all. There's no reason for me to have to do that. So it endangers people. And it was funny. You're probably familiar with the Luby's Diner shooting years and years ago. It was one of the first mass kind of shootings. A guy, Luby's Diner is in Texas or was in Texas, and a guy drove his truck through the plate glass windows right into the dining room, got out and started shooting. There was a good book about it. The woman that wrote the book lost her parents in that shooting. She went on to be a congresswoman, and there's some really good clips of her testifying in Congress about concealed carry because they didn't have concealed carry back then. And she had a gun, but she was a chiropractor. She didn't want to take a chance on getting caught, so she left it in the car. The guy that was shooting that killed her parents was like a dozen feet in front of her, and she couldn't do anything. But I had a guy in class last month who was there. He was 18 years old when it happened. The truck drove in right behind him. And this thing when they make these laws, it just endangers the public, in a number of different ways. So it's unfortunate, but that's what we have right now.
Yeah, and that Bruin response, and it's really interesting. There's a lot to unpack there, and the sensitive locations. It's if you look at the different jurisdictions and how they're ruling on some of these things, strangely enough, like the park prohibitions are what's sticking, which really doesn't make sense if you drill down, because here we are in Monmouth County, New Jersey, where the Battle of Monmouth took place during the Revolutionary War, which is a park. So the actual Monmouth Park, battlegrounds is now a sensitive location, but the Revolutionary War was fought there. So, and I've also heard the arguments going around when they talk about, the Northampton law and going affray and into the festivals to terrorize people armed, and it's a whole bunch of silly nonsense. Now, one of the other things that you and I had kind of ping ponged back and forth is this has affected training. So as an educator, because you keep going back to the training, how has this affected like the education in California and the training, and what has that kind of done to it? I guess practically and also as an industry, like what's going on there?
Well, a couple of different things there. From the student point of view, they doubled the training requirement for an initial concealed carry from 8 hours to 16 hours. And then the renewals went from 4 hours to 8 hours. And again, it's hard to argue against training. I mean, that's probably going to be there forever. The problem is because I used to have this issue as an instructor, thinking about, I still get a lot of students. Will ask them, "Hey, when's the last time you shot?" Students will actually admit, "Well, I haven't shot since I saw you 2 years ago." And it used to bug me sometimes with the training thing. And then somebody pointed out to me that all you can do is offer it. You can't make irresponsible people responsible. So they can double the training because it's like I said, it's hard to argue against training. Yeah, more training, that should be great. But the reality is, if you could make that training requirement 5 days, and you'll get people that, okay, I'll do that 5 days because you're requiring me to do that. I won't do anything else until you require it again. So I think the bigger effect of that kind of stuff is I think it has the effect more of pricing people out because now the cost doubles because I'm as an instructor, you can't, okay, I'm spending 2 days here now. I got to charge for 2 days. So I think probably the bigger harmful effect is it's pricing people out. And if you think about people that for whatever reason are maybe at the lower end of the socioeconomic scale where maybe they're stuck in places that are actually really dangerous and they really could use a gun to protect themselves and now they can't, it's all they can do to put food on the table and, acquire a decent gun. But now you're gonna, force them to spend almost $1,000 just for the privilege of doing it. And so I think that was a bad thing that happened. So I think just doubling that kind of stuff, I don't know that it improved anything. If anything, I think it probably more priced people out of being able to do it. The other thing that they changed now is renewals. Renewals, you'll have to get a fingerprints every year now, or every 2 years when you renew your license, which is just completely. I mean, it's idiotic. And that okay, they have my fingerprints. Why do they need my fingerprints again every 2 years? It doesn't change. But again, and if you look at it from their point of view, because I used to be a little more naive about this, I used to think that, oh, that doesn't make any sense. They must just not know. No, they know exactly what they're doing. If you come at it from the direction that the purpose of this thing is to do anything they can do to impede your ability to exercise your Second Amendment rights. I mean, that's all these laws are based on that. And so if you look at that, okay, well, gee, they'll make this one more step that they have to do. And something I discovered, I think when I went, because the other thing for us instructors, you have to have a certificate of eligibility, which you have to renew every year for, I think it's like 25 bucks or something. But the first time you do it, you've got to go get a live scan and for fingerprints. Okay, so more fingerprints for them. And when I went to the live scan place and oh yeah, it's $30 for live scan. Then she looked on the form. Oh wait, this is firearms. That's $110. So okay, that's
Ooh.
nice. So that's the kind of effect it has. So I mean these things hurt and they just endanger the public and they hurt students. From the instructor training thing, they went through and they changed the requirements. For civilian instructors before, if you were an NRA pistol instructor, you were okay, and then you had to go through some other things, but that was an okay, that was a reasonable enough certification for you to be able to get approved by the sheriffs and go through and be a concealed carry instructor.
Right, because
Um,
you have a list. I don't mean to cut you off, but it's like a
uh-huh.
registry, right? So people can go and look at that registry. Who's an approved instructor? Is that right?
Yeah, they call us vendors nowadays,
Okay.
but you can go onto the San Diego County Sheriff's site and you can see the list of approved
Okay.
vendors. And it's interesting because I was, on the one hand, I was concerned, I was curious to see if we would lose a bunch of vendors. But I just pulled the list up from 2022. There were 35 approved vendors on there, and there may be several instructors under each vendor heading. Um, but now actually there's 64 on there. So it did increase, but I mean we have a huge increase in demand out here now
Sure.
too, with people getting licenses. But again, what they essentially did or tried to do was was eliminate civilian instructors basically, because what they did was they said, well, the NRA pistol thing is not acceptable anymore. What is acceptable, like if I got the list up here on my screen, but the BSIS instructor, so that's the guard card people for armed security guards, if you're an instructor there, if you're a post certified, which I went through and got that, that's the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training. So people that train police officers are post certified. So it's funny, one of the inadvertent things I think of this ruling, it kind of opened up some post classes to some civilians. So I was able to go through and do that because everybody in the class was pretty much law enforcement, except for me and maybe two or three other people. Um, but they have that. If you're a military instructor, a range master, if you're an instructor for highway patrol, the other way that civilians get in there, and I was fortunate on it because I teach with somebody that knew about the post thing, so I was able to do that. Most people probably wouldn't know how to do it or understand how to get in there. Um, but the only other thing they accept the NRA thing, but you have to be an NRA pistol instructor and you have to be a personal protection inside the home instructor, personal protection outside the home instructor. You can't just be a pistol instructor, and NRA has their own CCW instructor cert, but apparently that's not good enough. And I talked to an instructor who had talked to, he knows some of the people from the NRA that actually talked to DOJ when they were trying to work this out. And they were trying to get DOJ to accept the NRA CCW instructor class to be okay to be certified. And they were saying their feeling, off the record, their feeling was DOJ was more concerned with how long the classes went because they kept asking them, well, how long is the class for the CCW instructor? It's like a 2-day class or something. But the inside the home, outside the home thing, you've got to do inside the home, the student version first. That's 2 days,
Yep.
plus one more day for an instructor. And you have to do that before you do the outside the home, which I think is another 2 days, plus the instructor. So you got to do
On
six
on
days.
top of basic pistol, on top of
Yes.
basic instructor training, BIT.
Yeah. So it seemed that it sounded to these people that were talking to DOJ that they were more concerned with the length of time, and they went with the one that was the greater length of time. Because if you look at, I mean, the inside of the home, outside the home classes, they're not bad classes, but they don't really talk about concealed carry. They don't do anything like that. I haven't gone through their concealed carry thing yet. I may do that because there's one coming up this month that I might be able to sneak into. But again, it's like the stuff that they do is just like you're there intentionally to impede people and make it difficult. And it's hard not to think that way because, I mean, I look at some of this stuff, like the guy we were talking about 1333, the duty to retreat thing, right?
Right.
It was a fairly new assemblyman from the LA area. I think he got elected in 2022. If you look at his website, he describes himself as a social justice warrior and an environmental justice warrior, right? So he writes this thing saying that you have to retreat even in your own home. And I guess he got a big response or an upward because like a day or two later, he posts on X. He's saying, "Well, I didn't mean to tell people that they couldn't defend themselves. I'm just trying to stop vigilantes like Kyle Rittenhouse from, being able to do
Right.
that." Right? That's what this
And
guy's
it
saying.
was Kyle Rittenhouse retreated how many times? And, if you look at the details of the case,
Yeah, you couldn't. I wrote about it. Kyle Rittenhouse is a hero. I don't care what these idiots want to say about him. I
yeah.
mean, I know adults. I don't know if I would have responded as perfectly as he responded to that situation. And he was what, 17 or 18, I guess. But it shows the level of ignorance there because this guy could have found out about it, and he withdrew this bill like within a couple of days. It was like 3 or 4 days later, I think he withdrew this bill. Um, so I mean, these people know they could find out. I mean, that's a couple of phone calls. They could find out all they need to know about concealed carry and stuff like that if they're crafting these kinds of laws. What do people actually do really? Because one of the things I think it's our fault as gun owners is we've let this misinformation percolate and develop over the last 50 years or so. So now, like this idea that, well, you can't have a concealed carrier in a park. Well, why? It's like there's no danger because it even says it in this in the SB2. I was reading that text this morning too again, and it even says, it's known that the presence of a firearm someplace makes that place more dangerous. Well, no, it doesn't. But I mean, it's just a concealed carrier. Obviously, has been vetted, has a background check. They don't, concealed carriers don't hurt people. Criminals don't care about these laws. They don't. They want to carry in the park. They're carrying in the park. I mean, it's just,
Well,
and they
and
know,
that was
it's
my argument for years is the criminal element has the best permitting system there is. They grant themselves their permit and they carry on. And
yeah,
that's
it's real,
it. Well,
real
the reg,
freedom.
I mean, if you think about it, and I'm not advocating for that, it's just a
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah, well, seeing it's a shame because these laws now, what they do is they force law-abiding citizens to make a decision, right? Gee, I'm going to the park with my wife and kids. Do I go there knowing I can't protect them now, knowing stuff happens in parks? I've got my concealed carry, I've got my training, I've got my skills, my tools, but I have to leave them home because of this ridiculous law. That's the position you're putting people in. You're putting law-abiding people in that position. Do I choose the safety of my family or do I choose, obeying this law by some goofy politician? And it's unfortunate that they do that. And the thing that's really a shame, I think, too, is these are not stupid people. I mean, there are some stupid people. There's people like
Sure.
Mac Waters and
Right.
AOC and stuff. I don't even know how these people feed themselves. But most of them are not like that. Most of them are just, they know what they're doing and they're just doing it. And it's a matter of power and control. And they don't care that they're hurting people or they're endangering people. And it's unfortunate. But, like I tell people, you got to not put these people in office. I mean, that's the real thing to do to stop this.
For sure. Now, what do you think going forward? The fate might be if some of this maybe do some forecasting. What do you think? How is California's law going to flesh out? Do you see it leaning?
I think I have to be an optimist. I think it's eventually all going to get overturned because it's blatantly unconstitutional. I mean, it's obvious what they're doing, and I have to have faith in the Supreme Court at some point is going to, they're waiting for just the right case to hear so they can make a ruling that has the most impact, I think. And I think you're going to see that over the next probably year or two or three. They're going to rule on some of these because what these people are doing, they're just blatantly defying the Supreme Court. So now, having said that, though, again, why I say that the courts are not a good strategy because I just look on how they ruled on the ghost gun thing, right? 7-2, upholding the ATF's rule saying what a piece of a gun is now a gun. Um,
Not a
and
Second Amendment case, though. There wasn't a Second
no,
Amendment ground. So I think that's an important thing to put out there. So I'm not
yeah.
disagreeing with what you're
Uh-huh.
saying, but the minutia of this and the details, I think once all the legal eagles sift through this, we're not going
Uh-huh.
to be left with just straight up lemons. There might be some lemonade. I don't know, but you're
Well, yeah,
correct.
and that's true though. It depends on the argument they made before the court as to why this thing is. But the remedy to that, which I'm waiting to see, because that is not law. That's an ATF ruling.
Bingo.
So now that okay, Kash Patel is in charge of the ATF, so just rescind your ruling. Okay, we're not going to say that anymore. That would be the simple remedy because this it doesn't require the court really. It's not a law. It doesn't require Congress. It just requires them to rescind their ruling on it, I guess. So
Or
yeah, it'll be
send the
interesting.
ruling and establish solid precedent in the country. And then, if possible, yes, bring legislation to the table. I mean, that's the most powerful thing that I think we could
Yeah, I
get
just
to. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. So, Joe, I think we're going to wrap up here in a little bit. Is there anything that I left on the table that you want to talk about that we didn't cover that is important about the changes in California, what's going on, how you see things?
no, I just thought what the real message to get out here, which I try to get out to all the students I talk to, is you need to be informed and you need to be up on what's happening and you need to know what these politicians are doing and you need to get involved and get these people out of office and elect the right people. And because I'll hear, gun owners will say, because I always blame, I'm pretty harsh in class. It's hey, you guys are unhappy, it's your fault. And people, well, I didn't vote for Newsom. And my response to that is, okay, well, what did you do to get other people not to vote for Newsom? Did you do anything? Did you support groups that are fighting for these other people? Did you support the other candidates? And nobody does anything. They just, well, I didn't vote for him. Well, no, but you didn't do anything else. And you have to do that stuff. And to do that, you have to be informed. And that's why that's the big reason why I write these articles and things every week. If you look at my again the on Substack, getagrip.substack.com, the weekly roundup articles, a collection of articles by people like you and Lee Williams and Ayub and all these other people. And there's, every Saturday morning, 5 or 6 articles I'll throw out there that are Second Amendment, gun, or, political, culture, I guess, related things. But just to expose people to this and get them to think about, hey, start looking at some of this stuff to expose them to some other writers, some other information. Because if you're not informed, you really can't do anything about that. It's surprising how many students that I have, concealed carry students, that aren't aware of SB2. There's probably a third of each class, and this includes renewals. It's like you're carrying out there. How could you not know this? But I mean, there's a lot of them like that, and people just aren't informed. So, hopefully they'll read my Substack. That's a way. It's an easy, painless way to do it because, you and I read a lot more and view a lot more than the average person does on this stuff. So, a good way for the average person is subscribe to my Substack, and every Saturday you'll get something, and that'll put you on the road.
And that's free, right? I think we need to
It
get that
is.
out of the way.
Yes,
So
it's
that's
free.
not going to cost you anything. So if you
Not a
check it out,
thing.
getagrip.substack.com, and then you could get Joe's aggregate on the roundup as well as your articles. And you push out, fairly regularly, we'll say articles. And I know it, we joke about the
Trying to
wax
get
and the
more
wane,
regular, but yeah.
the wax and the wane because you've been training so much. So you've been spending so much time in the classroom. I get it. So that's where people could find you, getagrip.substat.com. Where else could they find you, or where would you want to direct people to? I know you talked about for training purposes, there's some places people can find you as well.
Yeah, those are mostly, again, that's where I do most of my writing. I still publish a little bit on the San Diego County Gun Owners blog site. Um, the teaching I do for people that are in San Diego County, on the USC, I always have to stop and think because everybody uses the same five letters and they scramble them around. The USCCA site is where I post all my classes. So the United States Concealed Carry Association. If you click on there for live training and then, this area here, you'll see my classes come up. I teach with Bill Deasy, one of the greatest instructors in all the land out here in San Diego. His company is CCW USA. So Bill and I teach classes every weekend out there as well. So that's where you can find me.
All right. Well, Joe, thank you so much. Everybody, check out the San Diego County Gun Owners pack. They've got some tremendous resources over there. They're also in need of support. And check out Joe's work on getagrip.substack.com. And thank you for chatting with me today, Joe.
Okay, well, thank you, John.